Have you ever wondered how New Zealanders used to sound over 100 years ago? You have? You're in the right place because I found some really interesting examples of New Zealanders speaking from well over 100 years ago. Sound interesting? Let's go have a listen. Okay, first up, we're going to listen to a New Zealand English speaker called Hannah Cross. She was born in Dunedin in 1851. That's 170 something years ago. Like, math's not my strong suit. We're probably looking at the first generation of English speakers to be born in New Zealand at this point. So this is going to be incredibly interesting. Anyway, let's have a listen.
Turnips required weeding. They went and helped weed the turnips. They had, of course, unless they went out to work, they would get no food.
Okay, that's really interesting. Now, according to the site where I found this, Hannah Cross, born in Dunedin in 1851, speaks with the vowels and intonations of West Highland Scottish English. A few of the words she used confused me slightly at the beginning. She's actually talking about turnips, the root vegetable, but she says it in a way, I thought she was saying turnips for a second because she says it so quickly. Turns out she's saying turnips in that very sort of Scottish way. I'm not sure if I can do it, like turnips or something like that.
And when the turnips required weeding, they went and helped weed.
And when the turnips required weeding, we went out to help? She's kind of like, help?
Weed the turnips.
Oh, weed the turnips. Okay, help weed the turnips.
They had, of course, unless they went out to work, they would get no food.
Of course, unless they went out to work, they get no food. But yeah, my first impression listening to this was I was listening to a woman from Scotland. I'm interested to hear what others think. Anyway, let's listen to the next person in this little audio example. Another person born in Dunedin, this time in 1866. And the guy's name is Malcolm Ritchie. Yeah, born in Dunedin in 1866. So he's a bit younger than, what was her name? Hannah. And the description here doesn't say anything about his parents. It just says that his mixed accent is mainly southwestern English, but is influenced by Scottish, Irish, and Cornish sounds, reflecting the population of Cromwell. Okay, so maybe he was born in Dunedin, but moved to Cromwell, which is in central Otago in New Zealand, if you're not too familiar with New Zealand geography.
He had to go down. There was two cutters plying up and down the bay. And he went down with one on Monday morning and come home on Saturday night. And he was aboard the Pride of the Yarra was the name of the cutter that he was in, coming up after night from port. And she got wrecked.
To me, he sounded a little bit more typical New Zealand, a little bit. But yeah, I think you could be forgiven for thinking that you were listening to someone from, maybe the southwest of England. They mentioned Cornwall, like he had a lot of Cornish influence in his accent there. And I can hear that. As someone who's got family from the southwest of England, I can definitely recognize that sound. He was talking about ships, and it's one of the reasons I'm wearing the Steady the Ship hat today, because there's nautical themes here. He's talking about a type of boat, a cutter. And I noticed he said Saturday, not Saturday. I still hear a few mostly older people in New Zealand talk like this as well. They say like Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday. Let's go back and listen to a couple of things he said.
He had to go down. There was two cutters plying up and down the bay.
Yeah, there was two cutters going up and down the bay. The way he says cutters. Yeah, that's how they talk in the southwest of England.
And he went down with one on Monday morning and come home on Saturday night. And he was aboard the Pride of the Yarra was the name of the...
Yeah, actually on a second listening, he doesn't really sound much like a New Zealander to me, probably because I'm actually looking for those differences now. But yeah, interesting to hear what others think. I can really hear a southwestern English influence for sure, like Devon and Cornwall mix. But yeah, what do you reckon? Okay, the next person in the recording now is a woman, Annie Hamilton, born 1877. Okay, Annie's also from the south. She was born in Arrowtown to Irish parents, so this will be interesting. Does she sound Irish? Let's have a look.
With the old identities, one helped the other.
Yes.
I've known a woman to come into my mother's house and say, with a bit of brown velvet, and she said, look, I'll do your ironing for you if you'll cut out this suit for Michael.
Right.
Well, eventually Mother finished the suit. They were very, very homely.
Interesting. I didn't hear an Irish accent there at all, despite her parents being Irish. To me, she sounded a lot closer to what you might call a, I don't know, typical New Zealand accent. Let's go back and listen to a couple of things. There was a weird word she said there, Brownhilda, a bit of Brownhilda. I have no idea what that is.
With the old identities,
With the old identities. She says it in that, yeah, I've heard Irish people say old a little bit like that. She says old a little bit. I can't quite do it, but I've heard Irish people say it like that.
I've known a woman to come into my mother's house and say, with a bit of brown velvet. And she said, look, I'll do your...
Bit of brown... Yeah, if anybody knows what Brownhilda is, let me know. I'll Google it later, I suppose.
ironing for you. If you'll cut out this...
I'll do your ironing for you. She says it very drawn out. I'll do your ironing for you.
...suit for Michael.
Make a suit
Well,
for
eventually Mother finished the suit. They were very, very homely.
I don't hear an Irish accent there at all. But hey, that's me. What do you guys make of Annie Hamilton's accent from Arrowtown? Okay, final person on this recording now. Another woman from the South Island, from Otago again. It's Catherine Dudley. She was born in Otago in 1886. And according to her little bio here, she has Scottish parents.
Oh, there was no Arrowtown. You know what I mean? There was no township or anything.
All tents.
No, there wasn't a thing here when they came here first. Not a tent of any. In 61, there wasn't a tent of any description in Arrowtown. They came here in 61 and they had no supplies and they had to go back to Dunedin, you see.
Didn't sound very Scottish to me. In fact, she sounds the most like a, again, quote unquote, typical New Zealander to me, to my ear at least. I noticed she said Arrowtown, like Arrowtown, and she did roll her R's like, you know, many Southlanders do.
Oh, there was no Arrowtown.
Oh, there was no Arrowtown.
You know what I mean? There was no township or anything.
All tents.
No, there wasn't a thing here when they came here first. Not a tent of any. In 61, there wasn't a tent of any description in Arrowtown. They came here in 61 and they had no supplies and they had to go back to Dunedin, you see.
Fascinating. I think she is probably the most modern New Zealand sounding accent out of all these people recorded here. It's interesting that all of these speakers recorded are from the South, which is famous for having a heavy Scottish influence in the population down there. And despite that, to me at least, I don't think any of the speakers here, apart from the first one, who was born very, very soon after her parents arriving, probably one of the first like children of settlers to be born in New Zealand, really. Apart from her, none of the others really sounded Scottish at all, to me at least. All right, next, let's listen to an example of another New Zealander, this time quite a famous New Zealander. We're going to listen to Bert Monroe. Of course, Bert Monroe, famous for breaking the world land speed record, I think it was, back in the 1960s, I'm not too sure. And of course, there's that movie, The World's Fastest Indian, where Anthony Hopkins plays Bert Monroe. And I've said in a previous video of mine that I didn't think that Anthony Hopkins really nailed the Southland accent very well, let alone a New Zealand accent. But anyway, let's listen to Bert Monroe talk.
You can live more in 5 minutes in a motorcycle in some of these events I've been in than some people do in a lifetime. You live more in 5 minutes.
Now, Bert was born in Invercargill, way down the bottom of the South Island of New Zealand, in 1899, according to his Wikipedia. He's definitely got that Southland burr that the area is famous for. He says something like, you live more in 5 minutes on a motorcycle than some people do in a lifetime. Yeah, he really rolls his R's in those words. Again, I'm not that great at doing it.
What do you think of Bert Monroe?
Oh, old Bert? Well, he's a bit of a dag, you know, but he's a trier, isn't he?
Yeah, there it is again. He's a trier.
Well, I always figure a man's like a blade of grass. He grows up in the spring strong and healthy and green, and then he reaches middle age and ripens, as it were. And then in the autumn, he's like a blade of grass. He just finishes, fades away, and he never comes back, just like a blade of grass. Is that what you want, a philosophy? And I think when you're dead, you're dead. I've always thought that since I grew up a bit.
Wow, that last line he said there was very, very interesting. He said, no, the way I would say it is when you're dead, you're dead. But the way he said dead, it sounded incredibly, to my ear at least, he really sounded like someone from the southern United States, somewhere like that Appalachia region, like Tennessee, that sort of area. He said, to me, I'm not sure if I can do it justice, when you're dead, you're dead. And I think it's again due to a lot of that southwestern Devon Cornwall style English that's really influenced the bottom of the South Island speech down there. I could be wrong, just my opinion, but as I mentioned before, my grandma was from Devon and she kind of spoke like that. And I remember hearing her speak sometimes and I thought, and I said to her a couple of times, like, you sounded like you were from, I don't know, like Tennessee, sort of, you know, the southeastern United States when you said that. Bert says that here too. Let's have a quick rewind of that. Listen to that little bit again.
And I think when you're dead, you're dead. I've always thought that.
Yeah, when you're dead, you're dead. It just sounds like, I don't know, the Beverly Hillbillies or something. I don't know, I find that fascinating. Okay, I've got one more example of a New Zealander who was born over 100 years ago speaking English. And this time we're going to listen to a sailor actually, called Alan Wiley. He was on board a New Zealand Navy ship called the Limerick during World War II, and the Limerick was famously torpedoed and sunk by a Japanese submarine off the coast of New South Wales in April 1943, according to this. He was born in Gisborne, so finally someone from the North Island, born in Gisborne in 1921. Anyway, let's have a listen to Alan talk about the night the ship was sunk.
So I did, and when I heard bang in the morning, I jumped out of bed and lost my pajama pants. And when I looked for my pants on the settee there, they weren't there, my trousers. My mate had jumped out and grabbed them, and he had them on. Yeah. So
he's talking about how when the torpedo hit, obviously he heard a loud bang, woke him up, and yeah, the shock or the surprise of things, he lost his pants. So, yeah, there's a picture of him a little bit further down. Yeah, you can see he's wearing a pair of shorts that one of the sailors back on shore in Australia gave him.
I went out and the joker said to me, get back inside and get some strides on. So I went to go in, but all the bulbs had blown out and the lights in the passageway, and I walked in glass. So I thought, no, I won't do that. So I went out. And then when the Corvette picked me up next day, the sailor gave me a pair of shorts. Right. That's one of the shorts I got on now. Okay. That's them you can see there. That's one the sailors gave me.
So did you grab your life jacket on the way out?
Eh?
Did you get your life jacket?
Yeah, that's the life jacket I got there on. See, that's it there. Mm-hmm. That's it, like a waistcoat. See, my mate's got his life jacket rolled up there. Yeah. He was a second cook, Titch Malmo, yeah. Right. But
to me, that sounds pretty... Well, I won't say you hear many New Zealanders speak exactly like that anymore, but I can certainly recall my grandparents talking like that quite a bit. And actually, one of the reasons I chose this video as an example to listen to is also because the little fella you can see in the middle here, with his life jacket rolled up, as Alan talks about, his mate Titch Malmo, he talks about. Titch Malmo was my great uncle, nonetheless, my grandmother's brother. And I'm presuming they called him Titch because he was, yeah, well, not the largest man around. One of the things I've often said on this channel in videos where I'm talking about New Zealand English and how it's changing, etc., is that I think Australian English had a really, really big influence on how New Zealand English was spoken. And you can really hear that in those people who were born around at like the turn of the 19th century, early 20th century. I've said it to friends and family before, like people like my grandparents who were born in New Zealand, and as far as I know, never really spent any considerable amount of time in Australia before, spoke in a lot of Australianisms, or what we would consider stereotypical Australian speech. I mean, my nan would even say things like, "You silly galah," not flamin' galah. That was Alf Stewart, wasn't it? But yeah, there's no galahs in New Zealand. And my grandfather would often say things were corker, as in good, like that's a corker party. That's a word we often associate with Australians and how they speak. So yeah, that seems to have died out with that generation of New Zealanders, I think. Anyway, that's my take on all these speakers and how they sound to my ear. I'd be really, really interested to know what you think about how these people sound to you. So let me know in the comments. And if you're interested in watching more videos about New Zealand English, how it's changed, how it's changing, etc., then I've got more videos on that topic here.